In New York, trouble usually has manners. In New York, trouble usually has manners. It rings the bell, waits to be admitted, and only then begins rearranging your life. That afternoon it arrived at West 35th in a tan overcoat and an expensive hat. Fritz opened the door with his usual gravity. The visitor smiled at Fritz, looked past him at the hall, then up the stairs, then remembered to smile again. His eyes were too busy. I didn't like his smile. "Mr. Goodwin?" he asked. "That's me," I said, and took him in because that's my job. "Mr. Wolfe sees clients at 4. "I asked for 4, he said, as if the sentence might keep him safe. Out in the office, Wolfe was in his chair behind the desk, immense and still, his hands resting where they always rested, his gaze taking in the man the way a microscope takes in a slide. The room had its order, globe, catalogues, blotter, everything where it belonged. Our visitor made it feel temporary. He sat, shifted, and clutched a leather folder on his knees. "Mr. Wolfe, I was told you are discreet." Wolfe blinked once. Discretion is a requirement often imposed by the indiscreet. The man's jaw tightened. "My name is Reuben Klein." "Klein," Wolfe said, as though testing the syllable. "A manufacturer. Pharmaceuticals. Private." Wolfe waited. Silence with Wolfe is not a pause, it's pressure. Klein cleared his throat, then did something I rarely see from rich men. He lowered his voice. "Because someone is going to be murdered," he said. And I've heard that line enough to have opinions, but Wolfe's expression didn't change. "Explain." Klein leaned forward. "Last night I had a small dinner at my townhouse. 5 guests, all connected to a project of mine. After dessert, we were in the library. The talk was strained. The lights flickered for a moment, just a blink. And when they steadied, someone behind me said, very close to my ear, 'A murder will be announced in a whisper.'" He swallowed. I turned. No one was near enough. The guests were where they had been. No one admitted to saying it. They laughed, then changed the subject. I tried to laugh too. Wolfe's eyes sharpened. "You believe it was not a jest?" "It was a warning," Klein said. "Or a promise." "A promise requires intent," Wolfe said. "A warning requires knowledge. Which do you fear?" Klein's fingers whitened on the folder. "Both." I said, "Who are the guests?" He hesitated, then decided I was part of the furniture. "My attorney, Lenora Voss. My chief scientist, Dr. Elias Trent. My former partner, Martin Sloan. My philanthropy director, Vera Cather. And my niece, Dahlia Klein. 5 names, 5 roles, and at least 5 motives if you gave a man like Klein an hour in a bad mood." "You did not go to the police," Wolfe said. Klein's smile was thin. "To report a whisper, they'd advise sleep and fewer cigars." "I do not smoke," Wolfe said. "That wasn't meant for you," Klein murmured, then straightened. "I came here because the note wasn't only spoken." He opened the folder and slid out a single sheet of paper, plain and clean, typed in black capitals. "A murder will be announced in a whisper." So we set it on the blotter as if it might leave a stain. "That was on my pillow this morning," he said. "In my bedroom. 2nd floor. The house was locked." Wolfe looked at the paper for a full 5 seconds. For him, that was a burst of activity. "You have servants," Wolfe said. "Yes." "Vetted." "None were upstairs after midnight." "You have an alarm?" "Yes." "And it did not sound?" "No." Wolfe's eyes lifted to Klein. "Then your house is permeable." Klein's mouth twitched. "That is why I'm here. I want you to prevent it, and I want you to tell me who is close enough to whisper in my ear and leave a message on my pillow." Wolfe's voice stayed calm, but his attention had settled like a weight. "Mr. Klein, your account is theatrical." "It is true." "Truth is not persuasive merely by being true," Wolfe said. "What you require is inference. And I detest theatrics, but I detest intrusion more. I watched Klein's shoulders drop half an inch, a man hearing a door unlatch. "Mr. Goodwin," Wolfe said. "Telephone Mr. Panzer." That was the tell. Wolfe doesn't call Saul unless he expects resistance. Klein blinked. "You will take it?" Wolfe regarded him. "I have not agreed to anything," he said, "but I do not like anonymous announcements of murder in my city, and I like them least when they are made with stealth." I couldn't resist, or with access to second floors. Wolfe ignored me. "You will supply the addresses and habitual movements of the 5 people you named. You will not warn them. You will not attempt heroics. You will do nothing without my permission." Klein nodded too quickly. "Of course." Wolfe's gaze returned to the paper. "Understand this, Mr. Klein. If murder has been announced, the announcement is not the crime. The whisper is. We will find the mouth that made it, and we will see what appetite it serves." Saul Panzer answered on the 3rd ring, and I gave him the short version, which in this case meant leaving out the adjectives. Saul doesn't care about adjectives. He cares about doors, windows, and who has keys. Wolfe spoke to him for precisely 40 seconds, specifying addresses and the names of 5 people, and then hung up without farewell. That, in our shop, counted as urgency. Klein sat forward. "You believe it is one of them?" "I believe," Wolfe said, "that human beings prefer proximity. If a threat is whispered, it is rarely done by a stranger shouting from the curb." "That doesn't answer." "It does," Wolfe said, and closed his eyes. I took that as my cue. "Mr. Armitage compound. It's a neurological Armitage compound. It's a neurological treatment, potentially revolutionary. Trent leads the research. Sloan financed the early stages before I bought him out. Lenora Voss structured the acquisition. Vera handles the charitable arm that will distribute it internationally. Dahlia has a seat on the foundation board." "And what was strained?" I asked. Klein hesitated. "Trent wants more time. Sloan wants a public offering. Lenora advises caution. Vera thinks we're compromising ethics for speed. Dahlia believes I don't listen to anyone." "A crowded choir," I said. "Who benefits if you're frightened?" He stared at me. "I don't know." "That's honest," I told him. "Keep it up." Wolfe opened his eyes. The flicker of lights. Cause? A storm had passed earlier. The electrician found no fault. "And your seating?" Wolfe asked. Klein described the room with care. Fire placed to the north. Windows to the garden, a long table cleared after dessert. He had been standing near the mantel, glass in hand. Trent and Vera by the windows. Sloan at the drinks cart. Lenora in a leather chair. Dahlia perched on the arm of a sofa. "No one near enough to reach you?" I asked. "No. And yet the voice was at your ear." "Yes." Wolfe's fingers moved, a small adjustment. "Then either your perception is flawed, or your arrangement incomplete." Klein flushed. I was not mistaken. "Memory under stress is a pliable instrument," Wolfe said. "However, the note on your pillow is not." I escorted Klein out with instructions as specific as a recipe. He was not to discuss the matter, not to alter his routines, and not to replace a single servant. When the door closed, the brownstone seemed to inhale. "Well?" I said. Wolfe's gaze was on the typed sheet. "The phrase is interesting. It's melodramatic." "It is precise," he corrected. "Not there will be a murder. Not you will be killed. It promises an announcement and in a whisper. That implies audience and timing. So we're waiting for a curtain call?" "We are waiting," Wolfe said, "for context." By 6 o'clock, Saul called back. No forced entries at Klein's townhouse in the last month. Alarm serviced 2 weeks ago. Staff of 4, a housekeeper, a cook, a valet, and a night watchman who slept more than he watched. Miss Dahlia had visited the house that afternoon. So had Lenora Voss. Sloane had not been there in weeks. Trent kept late hours at the lab. Vera had attended a board meeting across town. Keys? Wolfe asked. Spare set in Klein's study, I said, relaying Saul's report. Accessible, Wolfe grunted. And the niece? Dahlia Klein, 28, educated, visible on the charity circuit, recently at odds with her uncle over funding allocations. Wolfe's eyes closed again. You will visit her tomorrow morning. And the others? In sequence. Observe before you inquire. I leaned back. You're taking it seriously. He opened one eye. Someone entered a bedroom undetected and left a message designed to alter behavior. That is strategy. I respect strategy. Dinner was excellent, as it always is when Fritz suspects turbulence. Afterward, the Wolfe retired to the plant rooms, and I stayed in the office with the typed sheet, which I had no business touching but did anyway. The paper was common stock, the type clean, no visible flaws in the ribbon strike. Whoever had composed it had chosen simplicity. At 9:30 the telephone rang. I answered. Silence, then breathing. Not labored, not to know. The announcement has not yet to know. The announcement has not yet been made, the voice said. Advise him to listen more carefully. The line clicked dead. I replaced the receiver gently. Wolfe was not in the room, but I had the distinct feeling the brownstone had heard it. When Wolfe returned, I told him verbatim. He did not ask how the caller knew where to reach us. I think it was one of the five. I think it was one of the five. I think, Wolfe said, that we are meant to think so. He settled into his chair, immense and immovable. Mr. Goodwin, tomorrow you will begin with the niece. Pay attention to what she does not say. People who whisper often believe themselves subtle. They are rarely as subtle as they imagine. And the murder? I asked. Wolfe's gaze shifted to the darkened window. If it is to be announced, it will be announced where it will do the most damage, he said. Our task is to determine who requires an audience, and why. The house was quiet again, but not settled. Somewhere in the city, a man had decided that death should arrive softly, and I intended to find out whose ear it was meant for. I began with Dahlia Klein at 10 the next morning, because Wolfe had said to, and because nieces are often underestimated until they aren't. Her apartment was on East 72nd, high enough to suggest ambition, but not so high as to prove it. She opened the door herself. She had her uncle's eyes and none of his caution. Mr. Goodwin, she said, I was expecting someone. Disappointed? I asked. That depends. Are you here to warn me or accuse me? Neither. I'm here to listen. She let me in. The place was arranged with careful informality, art that looked accidental and furniture that wasn't. A silver tea service sat untouched on a low table. You were at your uncle's dinner last night, I said. Yes. And someone whispered in his ear. Her mouth tightened. Ah, he told you. He hired us. That was fast. He doesn't like whispers. Neither do I, she said. I watched her hands. They were steady. Where were you standing when the lights flickered? By the sofa. I told him that. I prefer hearing it again. She exhaled. Trent was arguing about trial timelines. Martin Sloane was pretending not to argue. Vera was quoting ethical frameworks. Lenora was silent, which means she was calculating. The lights blinked. When they came back, Uncle Reuben looked different. Different how? Smaller, she said, as if something had leaned close. You didn't hear anything? No. No movement? No. I nodded toward the tea service. You visited his townhouse yesterday afternoon. She didn't blink. Yes. Second floor? I went to his study. Not his bedroom? She hesitated. And there it was, the smallest fracture. I may have gone upstairs to use the powder room, which is across from his bedroom. Yes. And you had access to the study where the spare keys are kept. Her chin lifted. Are you suggesting I crept into my uncle's bedroom to leave a note? I'm suggesting you had opportunity. And motive? You tell me. She walked to the window and looked down at the street. He's rushing the Armitage compound. He wants headlines before data. If something goes wrong, people will suffer. I told him that. So you frightened him? No. Why not? Because fear makes him stubborn. That was plausible. I rose. One more thing. Did anyone leave the library during dessert? She turned back. Lenora took a call in the hallway, briefly. How brief? 2 minutes. Maybe 3. Anyone else? No. I thanked her and left with the impression that she was telling the truth about most of it and editing one corner. Lenora Voss received me in her office downtown. Glass walls and a view of other glass walls. She wore a suit that meant business and a look that meant she preferred paper to people. Yes, she said when I mentioned the whisper. Reuben dramatizes. He doesn't think so. He never does. You stepped into the hallway during dessert. For a call. From a client. Name? She smiled without warmth. Confidential. Duration? Short. Long enough to circle behind him. Her eyes cooled. Are you implying I risk my career for theatrics? I'm implying nothing. I'm observing opportunity. She folded her hands. Martin Sloane resents being bought out. Trent resents being rushed. Vera resents capitalism. Dahlia resents her uncle's shadow. I resent wasted time. And yet, I said, you were in the hallway when the lights flickered. Her voice thinned. The flicker occurred before I returned. According to whom? According to everyone. That was neat. Too neat. Elias Trent met me at the laboratory, a place that smelled of sterility and nerves. He was pale, intense, with the distracted air of a man who prefers microscopes to mirrors. A whisper, he said. Reuben told me this morning. I assumed he meant metaphor. You didn't hear it? No. You want more time on the compound? Yes. He wants speed? Yes. You could gain leverage by frightening him. Trent's mouth tightened. If I wanted leverage, I would use data, not whispers. Did you leave the room? No. Did anyone? Lenora. I briefly. Everyone agreed on that point, which made it either true or convenient. Martin Sloane chose a club for our meeting, leather chairs and old money. He greeted me like an inconvenience. Reuben is paranoid, he said. He always was. You weren't near him when the lights blinked? I was at the cart. With your back turned? Possibly. Convenient, he laughed. Young man, if I wished him harm, I would not whisper it. That's almost poetic. I'm not a poet. No, I said. You're an investor. Vera Cather was last. She met me in the foundation offices, surrounded by photographs of children and slogans about hope. I heard nothing, she said quietly. But I felt something. What? Intent. That's not evidence. No, she agreed. It's intuition. You oppose the timeline. I oppose profit masquerading as philanthropy. Would you sabotage your own benefactor? Her eyes flashed. I would confront him. Openly. By 4, I was back at the brownstone with 5 versions of the same evening and 5 motives polished to a shine. Wolfe listened without interruption, eyes half closed, fingers steepled. Common elements? He asked when I finished. Lenora in the hallway, everyone else stationary. No one admits proximity. All acknowledge tension. And the niece, he said, had access to the house. Denies the bedroom. Wolfe nodded. And the telephone call last night. Male voice. He leaned back. The whisper is expanding. Meaning? First it is delivered privately. Then it reaches us. The perpetrator desires awareness. An audience, I said. Yes. The telephone rang again. I picked up, a man's voice, calm as before. Has he listened? To what? I asked. To the silence between his guests, the voice said. The announcement approaches. Who is this? You will know soon enough. The line went dead. I looked at Wolfe. He did not move. Mr. Goodwin, he said, we will not wait for the announcement. We will create it. I stared at him. Create it how? Hire a town crier? Wolfe's eyes opened fully. By assembling the elements prematurely. You want them here? Yes. All 5? Yes. On what pretext? The only one that compels attendance, clarity. I leaned against my desk. They won't come running because you snap your fingers. They will, Wolfe said, if Mr. Klein informs them that I've identified the individual who entered his bedroom. I considered that. You haven't. Correct. And when they ask for a name, I will decline until they are present. That's a gamble. It is positioning, Wolfe said. Our whisperer believes himself in control of timing. We will disturb that. I called Klein. He answered on the first ring, breathless as if he had been waiting beside the instrument. Yes. You will invite your 5 guests to Mr. Wolfe's office tomorrow at 6, I said. Tell them Mr. Wolfe has determined how your bedroom was entered and by whom. No details. Insist. Silence. Then, but has he? That's not your concern, I said. Can you persuade them? I can compel them, he said quietly. Good. Do it. When I hung up, Wolfe was watching me. You enjoy that, he murmured. Enjoy what? Applying pressure. It saves time. Sometimes, he said, it accelerates error. Whose? Yours. Ask if you are careless. I spread my hands. Then let's hope I'm not. The rest of the afternoon moved with the deliberate calm of a chess game in mid-play. Saul checked backgrounds again, this time for financial irregularities and private grievances. Ori Cather made discreet inquiries about Nero Wolfe's clients. Fred Durkin loitered near Sloane's club to see who came and went. No one reported anything explosive. That bothered me more than if they had. At 5:30 the next day, Fritz brought in coffee with an expression that suggested he disapproved of gatherings before dinner. Wolfe ignored him and adjusted his cuffs. They will arrive tense, he said. Observe the one who attempts to control the room. That narrows it to all of them, I said. The doorbell rang at 5:52. Dahlia arrived first. That told me something. What I meant? Then we understand each what I meant. Then we understand each other. She took a chair near the window. Her eyes moved over the office, cataloguing. Nero Wolfe came next, precisely at 6. She acknowledged Dahlia with a nod and chose the chair farthest from her. Distance can be eloquent. Trent arrived at 6:03, apologizing for laboratory delays that no one had asked about. His gaze flicked to Wolfe and away again. Vera Cather entered quietly at 6:06, offering me a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. Sloane was last, at 6:10, carrying impatience like a walking stick. Finally, Reuben Klein himself came in, pale but composed. He stood near the door. So pleased, Wolfe said. Dahlia leaned pleased, Wolfe said. Dahlia leaned forward. Uncle, what is this? Klein swallowed. Mr. Wolfe believes he knows how my bedroom was entered. 5 faces shifted, each in a different direction. Lenora spoke first. And, Wolfe said, before I elaborate, I wish to clarify certain details of your dinner. Sloane's jaw tightened. We've done that. Indeed, Wolfe said. Separately. I prefer unity. He turned to Lenore. You left the library during dessert. For a call. From whom? My office. At precisely the moment the lights flickered, her lips thinned. No. Who can confirm that? She hesitated. The call log. Produce it tomorrow, Wolfe said. He shifted his gaze to Trent. You remained by the window? Yes. With Vera Cather? Yes. Did either of you move? No, Vera said. Wolfe inclined his head. Mr. Sloane, you were at the drinks cart? Yes. With your back to Mr. Klein? For a moment. A convenient moment. Sloane's eyes flashed. If you're accusing me... I'm observing, Wolfe said. He turned to Dahlia. You were by the sofa? Yes. Did you at any time approach your uncle from behind? No. Wolfe's gaze settled on Klein. And you are certain the voice was at your ear? Klein's hands clenched. Yes. Wolfe leaned back. Then we confront an impossibility. 5 people in fixed positions, 1 whisper in intimate proximity. Silence spread. Vera spoke softly. Are you suggesting one of us lies? I am suggesting, Wolfe said, that at least one of you omits. Trent shifted in his chair. Lenora's fingers tightened on her bag. Sloane's foot began a faint, irregular tap. I watched Dahlia. She wasn't looking at Wolfe. She was looking at her uncle. The telephone rang. Every head turned. I picked it up. Yes? The same male voice, steady and close. Has he gathered them? Yes. Good, the voice said. Then listen carefully. A pause. The announcement will be made tomorrow night. In public. My grip tightened. Where? You will attend, he said. All of you. The line went dead. I replaced the receiver slowly. Wolfe's eyes were on me. Well? He says the announcement will be tomorrow night. In public. We are to attend. A ripple moved through the room. Fear, calculation, disbelief. Wolfe nodded once. Excellent. Sloane barked a laugh. Excellent? Yes, Wolfe said. Our whisperer has committed himself to a stage. Klein's voice trembled. What does that mean? It means, Wolfe said calmly, that someone among you intends not merely to threaten murder, but to display it. For a moment, no one spoke. The word display had landed harder than murder. In public, Vera said quietly. Where? The question hung in the air like smoke. I looked at Wolfe. He didn't glance at the telephone as if it might ring again. He didn't look at the suspects. He looked at Klein. Mr. Klein, he said, what public engagement do you have tomorrow evening? Klein blinked. Tomorrow? Yes. Klein swallowed. The Armitage Foundation is hosting a press preview, a preliminary announcement, investors, journalists, several medical representatives. How many? Wolfe asked. Perhaps 80. Location? The Harrington Hotel ballroom. Sloane let out a short breath. You don't think? I think, Wolfe said evenly, that an individual who promises a murder will be announced in a whisper and then escalates to a public declaration is interested in spectacle. Dahlia's hands had tightened in her lap. Uncle, cancel it. Klein shook his head automatically. I can't. The press... You can, Lenora said sharply. There are clauses for security concerns. And if the threat is a bluff, Sloane snapped, we'll look like fools. Vera's gaze moved slowly from one face to another. We may look worse if we proceed. Trent had gone pale. This is insane. Wolfe raised a hand. It is neither insane nor inevitable, he said. Mr. Klein, you will not cancel the event. 5 heads swung toward him. You can't be serious, Lenora said. I am, Wolfe replied. If the whisperer seeks an audience, depriving him of one alters nothing. He will simply choose another venue. We require containment. Containment, Sloane repeated. Yes, a fixed time and place. Known participants, controlled access. Klein's voice was unsteady. You're asking me to act as bait. I am asking you, Wolfe said, to behave as though nothing has changed. That's absurd, Dahlia said. Everything has changed. Wolfe's gaze shifted to her. Only if you permit it. The room tightened again. I stepped in before it snapped. We'll be there, I said. Mr. Wolfe and I. So will Saul Panzer and a few other gentlemen who prefer observation to applause. Trent wiped his palms on his trousers. And if someone actually attempts, then we will observe who attempts it, Wolfe said. There was a long silence. Finally, Klein nodded, once as though sealing something unpleasant. Very well, he said. Wolfe inclined his head. You may all leave. They didn't move at first. People rarely do when dismissed by a man who weighs more than their collective composure. Lenora rose first, smoothing her jacket. If this becomes farce, she said coolly, I will hold you responsible. Wolfe did not reply. Sloane stood, jaw tight, and followed her out. Trent lingered a second, as if tempted to speak, then thought better of it. Vera offered me a searching look. Dahlia paused beside her uncle. You don't have to do this, she said softly. Yes, he answered. I do. When the door closed and their footsteps faded, the brownstone exhaled. Well, I said, that was cheerful. Wolfe's eyes were half closed again. Which reacted most strongly? Trent looked ready to faint. Lenora looked ready to sue. Sloane looked annoyed. Vera looked worried. Dahlia looked protective. Of her uncle? Yes. Or of the Enterprise? Both, I said. Wolfe nodded faintly. The telephone call was placed during the gathering. From a public line? Unlikely. The voice was composed, unhurried. Our whisperer wished to ensure we proceeded. You think one of them slipped out? No, Wolfe said. I think the call was arranged before they arrived. I frowned. Meaning an accomplice? Meaning planning? He leaned back further. Mr. Goodwin, tomorrow you will inspect the Harrington Ballroom. For exits and lighting? For acoustics. I blinked. Acoustics. Yes, a whisper requires proximity. An announcement in a crowded ballroom requires amplification or misdirection. You think the murder might be metaphorical? I think, Wolfe said, that words are chosen carefully by those who admire them. The rest of the evening was devoted to arrangements. Saul would position himself near the main entrance, Fred near the service corridor, Ori by the stage. I would remain within 10 feet of Klein. Wolfe would be seated prominently, visible. Visible, I said. Yes, Wolfe replied. If our whisperer believes himself clever, he will be curious. And curiosity can be fatal. For someone, Wolfe said. The next afternoon I visited the Harrington. The ballroom was large, with a raised platform at one end and a polished floor that reflected chandeliers like a lake reflecting stars. 80 chairs would be arranged in semicircles facing the podium. A bar at the rear. 2 main exits, 1 service door, a stairwell to the lobby. I walked the perimeter slowly, counting paces, noting sight lines. If someone wanted to approach Klein unseen, they would need distraction. Back at the brownstone, I reported to Wolfe. And the lighting? He asked. Bright. No flicker. Good. At 7 the following evening we arrived. The room hummed with anticipation and polite greed. Journalists adjusted cameras. Investors murmured. Klein stood near the podium, composed but tight. Dahlia hovered nearby. Lenora spoke quietly with Sloane. Trent remained close to Vera, as if proximity might steady him. Wolfe took his seat in the front row, immovable as a monument. I positioned myself slightly behind Klein's right shoulder. The program began. No, he began. The Armitage compound, no, he began. The Armitage compound represents... The lights dimmed. Not flickered. Dimmed. A murmur rippled through the room. Then, from the speakers overhead, a voice. Low, measured, unmistakable. A murder will now be announced. Every head snapped upward. Klein froze. Beside me, Wolfe did not move at all. The voice continued. The murder of integrity. The chandeliers glowed at half strength, casting the ballroom in a theatrical haze that had not been part of the rehearsal. A technician near the rear stared up at the lighting panel as if it had betrayed him personally. From the overhead speakers, the voice continued, smooth and amplified. The Armitage compound is being advanced despite incomplete trial data. Adverse neurological reactions have been observed in Phase 2 subjects. These findings have been suppressed in favor of market acceleration. A collective intake of breath swept the room. Cameras, which had been idle, sprang to attention. Klein's knuckles whitened on the podium. "This is absurd," he said, but his voice wasn't reaching the microphones. The recorded voice overrode him. Documents detailing these reactions were circulated privately 3 weeks ago. They were dismissed. My eyes moved without turning my head. Trent had gone ashen. Vera's lips parted, not in surprise but in recognition. Lenora's jaw set hard enough to crack enamel. Sloane's gaze darted, not to Klein, but to the ceiling speakers. Wolfe remained seated, hands folded, eyes open and alert. "The murder of integrity," the voice repeated, "will occur tonight if silence continues." Then the lights surged back to full brilliance. The speakers went dead. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then 80 voices erupted at once. Journalists surged forward. Investors stood, shouting questions. Someone near the back demanded proof. A glass shattered. I leaned close to Klein. "Did you suppress trial data?" "No," he hissed. "We had inconclusive anomalies. Nothing definitive." "Inconclusive isn't nothing," I said. Across the platform, Trent was shaking his head violently. "This is distorted," he was saying to no one in particular. "Distorted." Vera stepped toward the podium. "Let him speak," she called, but her tone lacked authority. Lenora was already pushing toward the lighting technician. Sloane remained where he was, watching faces. Wolfe finally rose. He did not hurry. He did not gesture. He simply stood, and something about the solidity of him cut a narrow channel through the noise. "Mr. Goodwin," he said calmly, "escort Mr. Klein off the platform." I did. We moved toward a side corridor, not fleeing but withdrawing. Saul appeared as if summoned by gravity, positioning himself near the service door. In the corridor, away from the roar, Klein sagged against the wall. "It's not true," he said. "Not as stated." "That's a lawyer's answer," I told him. The Phase 2 reactions were minor. Temporary disorientation in 3 subjects. We adjusted dosage. "And circulated the report privately," I said. "Yes, but..." "Who received it?" "Lenora, Trent, Sloane, Vera. Dahlia insisted on transparency with the board. So all 5. His eyes widened. Behind us, footsteps approached, and Trent rounded the corner, breathing hard. "This is sabotage," he said. "The data was preliminary. We agreed it required refinement before disclosure." "Who had access to the audio system?" I asked. "I don't know." "Could you have prepared that recording?" He recoiled. "Why would I? To slow the rollout." "I've argued for caution openly," he snapped. "I don't need theatrics." Vera appeared next, composed but pale. "Reuben," she said, "we have to address the substance." "In front of a mob," he demanded. "In front of stakeholders." Wolfe entered the corridor, moving with deliberate patience. The noise from the ballroom swelled and receded behind him like surf. "Mr. Trent," he said, "when were the Phase 2 anomalies documented?" 3 weeks ago." "Who typed the summary?" "My assistant compiled the data. I finalized it." "And the phrase, adverse neurological reactions, was that yours?" Trent hesitated. "Yes." Wolfe nodded slightly. "The voice in the recording used that exact phrase." Trent's mouth opened, then closed. Sloane joined us, expression tight. This has gone far enough. We need to regain control. Control? Vera repeated softly. Yes. Deny the exaggerations. Promise review. Calm the market. Market, Vera echoed. Lenora arrived last, brisk and contained. The hotel manager swears no one accessed the control booth except staff. Staff can be persuaded, Sloane said. Or directed, Wolfe murmured. All eyes turned to him. The announcement, he continued, was not a murder of flesh but of reputation, a precise escalation from private whisper to public broadcast. You knew this might happen, Lenora said sharply. I knew an announcement was promised, Wolfe replied. I did not know its content. Dahlia stepped into the corridor then, eyes blazing. You said the anomalies were minor, she told her uncle. You said there was nothing to disclose. There wasn't, Klein insisted. Not yet. Not yet, she repeated. Wolfe studied her. Miss Klein, did you ever suggest that withholding the report would constitute a betrayal? Yes, she said without hesitation. And did you use the phrase, murder of integrity? Her head jerked back. Of course not. But you have spoken of integrity as fragile, Wolfe said. She flushed. That doesn't mean... No, he agreed mildly. It does not. From the ballroom came a chant of questions growing sharper. Wolfe turned to Klein. You must return, he said. Klein stared at him. Return? Yes. Now, and you must acknowledge the existence of the Phase 2 anomalies. Lenora inhaled sharply. That would be catastrophic. Not as catastrophic, Wolfe said evenly, as being proven a liar. Silence fell in the corridor. You believe one of us arranged this, Sloane said. I believe, Wolfe replied, that the individual who announced the murder of integrity wished to force confession. Vera's gaze moved slowly across the group. And if confession occurs, she said, the murderer succeeds. Wolfe inclined his head. Precisely. He looked at each of them in turn. The whisperer, he said, is among you. The word settled over them like a verdict not yet signed. Among us, Sloane said sharply. That's convenient. It is inevitable, Wolfe replied. The recording employed internal terminology. The timing exploited internal knowledge. Now the objective was internal correction or destruction. Trent shook his head. You're wrong. This could be industrial espionage. Espionage does not moralize, Wolfe said. It profits. Vera's eyes flicked toward him. And you believe this was moral? I believe, Wolfe said, that it was framed as such. The noise from the ballroom had shifted from outrage to restless expectation. Journalists were not leaving. They were waiting. Reuben, Lenora said, her voice controlled but strained. You must address them now. Klein looked from face to face, searching for loyalty and finding only calculation. If I admit to anomalies, he said hoarsely, the valuation drops. If you deny them, I said, and someone produces the report, it collapses. He closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was less arrogance and more arithmetic. Very well, he said. I will acknowledge preliminary data and promise independent review. Wolfe inclined his head once. That is wise. Klein straightened his jacket and walked back toward the ballroom. Dahlia hesitated, then followed. Vera went after them, expression resolved. Trent lingered, then trailed behind as if pulled by obligation. Lenora and Sloane remained. This is your doing, Lenora said quietly to Wolfe. On the contrary, Wolfe replied. It is yours. Her eyes flashed. Careful. Always. Sloane studied Wolfe with a narrowed gaze. You're enjoying this? No, Wolfe said. I dislike incompetence. The whisperer erred tonight. In what way? I asked. He overreached. From the ballroom came the amplified sound of Klein's voice. Steady now. Controlled. That he was admitting to limited Phase 2 irregularities, to ongoing evaluation, to commitment to transparency. The crowd murmured but did not riot. Cameras recorded contrition. Lenora folded her arms. "If you have an accusation, make it." "I will," Wolfe said. "Tomorrow, at my office. All 5 of you, 10 o'clock. "That's absurd," Sloane snapped. "We have damage control to manage." "You will attend," Wolfe said, not raising his voice. There was something in his tone that made refusal impractical. Sloane looked at Lenora. She gave a curt nod. 10, she said, "and I expect clarity." They returned to the ballroom. I looked at Wolfe. "Overreached?" "Yes." "He forced a confession." "He forced acknowledgement," Wolfe corrected, "but he also exposed himself." "How?" "The recording," Wolfe said, "was not live." "No," I agreed. "Pre-recorded." "And carefully edited." The phrase "murder of integrity" was inserted with emphasis. A flourish. So, Wolfe said. The whisperer admires rhetoric. I considered that. That narrows it to anyone who likes speeches. "Yes, that's helpful." He ignored the tone. "Additionally, the recording cited circulation of documents 3 weeks ago. That information was restricted." "To the 5? "Yes. And possibly assistance." "Possibly," Wolfe allowed. "But the bedroom note preceded this escalation, the same hand. Unless we're dealing with 2 conspirators." "Unlikely. The style is consistent, dramatic but controlled." We returned to the ballroom as Klein concluded his statement. Applause was thin but present. Questions resumed, more pointed now but less chaotic. The immediate explosion had been contained. A soul drifted near me. "Control booth checked," he murmured. "No signs of tampering. Playback was triggered from the main console. Staff claims instructions came from event coordinator." "Who?" I asked. "Name on file is Martin Sloane." I glanced toward the front. Sloane was speaking earnestly with 2 investors, his face the picture of concern. "You sure?" I said. "Paperwork signed this afternoon," Saul said. He requested a brief audio-visual segment before Klein's remarks. Said it was a surprise. I felt something click into place, not fully but enough to shift weight. Wolfe was watching Sloane too. "He arranged the recording," I murmured. "Perhaps," Wolfe said. "But arrangement is not authorship." "You think he was set up?" "I think," Wolfe said, "that Mr. Sloane is ambitious but not theatrical. He prefers leverage to spectacle. And this was spectacle." "Yes." Trent was now speaking urgently with Vera. Dahlia stood slightly apart, her gaze fixed not on her uncle but on Lenora. "Notice the niece," Wolfe said softly. "She's angry. She is measuring." "Measuring what?" "Impact." The event wound down slowly. Damage was assessed in murmurs and exchanged cards. By the time the ballroom began to empty, the crisis had transformed into narrative. Responsible company acknowledges minor issue. Pledges transparency. Markets would wobble, not collapse. Outside in the cool night air, Klein approached us. "Thank you," he said stiffly. "It could have been worse." "It may yet be," Wolfe replied. Klein's mouth tightened. "You believe one of them did this?" "I do." "Which?" "Tomorrow," Wolfe said. Dahlia stepped closer. "If this was meant to protect the public," she said, "is it still a crime?" Wolfe regarded her steadily. "Intent does not absolve manipulation," he said. "Nor does righteousness excuse deceit." Her gaze did not waver. As the others dispersed into separate cars, I turned to Wolfe. "Sloane signed for the audio segment," I said. "Yes. That's not nothing." "No," Wolfe agreed. "It is bait." "For whom?" "For us," he said. We rode back to the brownstone in silence. When we entered the office, Wolfe lowered himself into his chair with finality. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "tonight you will telephone each of them." "And say what?" "That we have identified the whisperer." I stared at him. "Have we?" "Yes," he said calmly. "We have." I didn't ask how. When Wolfe uses that tone, explanation is a privilege reserved for later. "So, same message to all 5? I said. "Precisely. Inform them that tomorrow at 10 I will present proof of authorship of both the bedroom note and the ballroom recording. Observe their reactions." "Over the telephone?" "Yes. Fear travels well across wires." I began with Martin Sloane. He answered on the second ring, irritation already in place. "Yes. Mr. Sloane, this is Archie Goodwin. Mr. Wolfe asked me to inform you he has identified the individual responsible for the whisper in tonight's recording. He will present proof at 10. Silence. Not the startled kind, the measured kind. "That's efficient," Sloane said finally. "Who is it?" "You'll hear tomorrow." A pause. "Then you're making a mistake," he said quietly. "About what?" "About what you think you know." 10 o'clock, I said, and hung up. Lenora Voss was next, so her response was sharper. "Identified," she repeated. "On what basis?" "Evidence," I said. "If you're relying on the event authorization, that's circumstantial." "I didn't mention that." "You didn't need to." There it was. Anticipation. 10 o'clock, I said. Trent answered breathlessly, as if he had been pacing. "You found out?" he said. "So Mr. Wolfe believes." A long exhale. "Good," he murmured. "Good." "Yes, this has gone too far." "Has it?" I asked. "Yes," he said, and the line clicked off. Vera Cather listened without interruption. "I see," she said when I finished. "And does Mr. Wolfe intend justice?" "He intends clarity." "That will have to do," she said softly. Dahlia was last. "You've identified someone," she said. "Yes." "And you're certain?" "Wolfe is." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Be careful, Mr. Goodwin." "Of what?" "Of confusing motive with guilt." The line went dead. I replaced the receiver and looked at Wolfe. Well, Sloane defensive but controlled. Lenora anticipated a specific accusation. Trent relieved. Vera calm, Dahlia cautious. Wolfe nodded. "As expected." "You want to share?" I asked. "In the morning." He closed his eyes, signaling dismissal. At 9:55 the next day, they were all present again in the office on West 35th. This time there was less pretense. They took their seats without prompting. Klein stood by the globe, hands clasped behind him. Wolfe regarded them in silence long enough to make the clock audible. "Yesterday evening," he began, "a recording interrupted a public announcement. The language employed was drawn from an internal report circulated 3 weeks prior. That report documented Phase 2 anomalies in the Armitage compound trials." He shifted his gaze to Trent. Dr. Trent authored the final language. Trent stiffened. "Yes, but authorship of language does not equate to authorship of sabotage," Wolfe continued. "The recording required access to the report, to the event schedule, and to the audio system." Sloane leaned forward. "Which I arranged at the coordinator's request." "Indeed," Wolfe said. "You signed authorization for an audio-visual segment." "Yes. Yet you did not supply the recording." "No?" Wolfe inclined his head. "The recording was delivered to the hotel 2 hours before the event by courier, labeled as Armitage Introductory Segment. The courier was paid in cash." Lenora's brows drew together. "How do you know that?" I inquired. Wolfe said. He turned to her. "Miss Voss, you left the library during dessert on the evening of the whisper." "For a call?" "Yes. A call placed from your office to your private mobile. There was no client." Her face went still. "The timing of that call coincided precisely with the flicker of lights," Wolfe said, which was not caused by storm residue, but by a brief manual interruption of the library's wall switch. Trent blinked. Manual? Yes. The switch is located just outside the library door, in the hallway. All eyes moved to Lenora. You're suggesting, Sloane began. I'm stating, Wolfe said calmly, that Ms. Voss positioned herself in the hallway, dimmed the lights momentarily, and stepped behind Mr. Klein. Lenora's voice was level. That's absurd. On the contrary, Wolfe said, in darkness, proximity can be achieved unnoticed. A whisper delivered. No, a typed note later placed using access to the spare keys in the study. I never. You visited the townhouse that afternoon, Wolfe continued. Alone. You possess intimate knowledge of Mr. Klein's routines and security. Klein stared at her. Lenora? She did not look at him. The motive, Wolfe said, was not murder of flesh but coercion. You required Mr. Klein to acknowledge the Phase 2 anomalies publicly. As counsel, you foresaw catastrophic liability if they were suppressed. He refused. You escalated, from private warning to public exposure. Silence pressed against the walls. Vera's voice was barely audible. You forced his hand. Lenora's composure cracked, not loudly but decisively. He wouldn't listen, she said. He dismissed the risk. If those reactions had worsened. So you staged a threat, Sloane said. I staged a reckoning, she snapped. With a whisper? Dahlia said. With certainty, Lenora replied. Wolfe nodded once. You miscalculated only one element. Her eyes flashed toward him. What? You believed fear would remain contained, he said. But fear is volatile. You risked panic, market collapse, and reputational ruin beyond repair. Lenora drew a slow breath. Better ruin than harm. Wolfe regarded her steadily. Intent does not sanitize manipulation. Klein's shoulders sagged. You could have come to me. I did, she said quietly. You chose optimism over prudence. The room fell silent again. Wolfe folded his hands. The whisper has been answered, he said. There will be no murder, of integrity or otherwise, if transparency now prevails. No one spoke. Outside, the city moved as it always did. Inside, the brownstone settled back into order. No one rushed for the door. That, more than Lenora's admission, told me the storm had shifted, but not passed. Klein moved first. Not toward Lenora, but toward Wolfe. You're certain? He asked quietly. I do not indulge in uncertainty when I speak, Wolfe replied. Klein turned to Lenora. You entered my bedroom. Yes. You placed that note on my pillow. Yes. And you arranged the recording. Yes. Each answer cost her something, but she paid without hesitation. Trent looked as if he might sit down abruptly, whether a chair was available or not. Vera's expression was grave, not triumphant. Sloane's eyes glittered, not with outrage, but calculation. Dahlia watched her uncle. You manipulated us all, Sloane said to Lenora. I protected us, she answered. By risking public collapse, he demanded. By preventing a worse one. Wolfe lifted a hand slightly. The room quieted. Ms. Voss's strategy, he said, was not without logic. She perceived a legal and ethical vulnerability. She attempted private persuasion. When that failed, she escalated. To blackmail, Sloane said. To compulsion, Wolfe corrected. There is a distinction. Lenora's chin lifted. I never intended permanent damage. The recording forced acknowledgement, nothing more. You couldn't guarantee that, Vera said softly. No, Lenora admitted. I couldn't. Klein sank into a chair as if the air had thickened. You should have trusted me. I trusted your ambition, she replied, not your restraint. The words landed harder than the whisper had. Silence held for several seconds. Finally, Dahlia spoke. It worked. All eyes shifted to her. "And the anomalies are acknowledged," she continued. "Independent review is inevitable. The Foundation will insist." Sloane gave a short, humorless laugh. "The market will insist on something too." Wolfe regarded them with the patience of a man who has already eaten. "The question before us," he said, "is not whether Miss Voss erred. She did. The question is what follows." Lenora met his gaze. "You intend to involve the police?" "No," Wolfe said. "There was no assault, no theft beyond temporary access to information, no physical harm. The note and recording constitute deception, not violence." Sloane exhaled sharply. "So she walks away?" "That depends," Wolfe said, "on Mr. Klein." All eyes turned to him. Klein remained seated, hands clasped, staring at the carpet as if it contained footnotes. "You endangered everything," he said finally. I preserved it," Lenora replied. "For now. For longer than you would have." He looked up at her then, and for a moment the others disappeared from the equation. This was not a courtroom. It was something older and more private, a fracture between trust and control. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "I could have," she agreed. "And yet," Wolfe said mildly, "you did not. You selected language carefully. Murder of integrity. A metaphor, not an accusation of fraud. You stopped short of irrevocable harm." Lenora's shoulders lowered a fraction. "I needed him to understand the stakes." "And do you?" Wolfe asked Klein. Klein closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, the sharp edge had dulled. "Yes," he said. Vera stepped forward. "Then let us proceed properly," she said. "Full disclosure to the board, independent oversight, transparent communication." Trent nodded quickly. "I'll prepare a comprehensive report. No minimization." Sloane's jaw tightened. "And the offering?" "Postponed," Klein said. Sloane's lips pressed thin, but he did not argue. Wolfe shifted in his chair. "Then the whisper has served its function." Lenora let out a breath she had been holding for 2 days. "You knew it was me before the ballroom, didn't you?" "I suspected," Wolfe said. "Your temperament aligns with strategic coercion. You prefer control through structure, not chaos." "And Sloane?" she asked. "He prefers leverage that accrues quietly." Sloane gave a faint snort but did not deny it. Dahlia looked at Wolfe. "And if she hadn't confessed?" "She would have," Wolfe said simply. Lenora's gaze sharpened. "Why?" "Because you are not reckless," he replied. "You are deliberate. And once the objective was achieved, you had no reason to persist in deception." A faint smile touched her mouth. "You understand me too well." "It is my profession," Wolfe said. The meeting dissolved not with drama, but with rearrangement. Vera and Trent began discussing documentation. Sloane stepped aside to place a call that would ripple through financial channels. Dahlia remained near her uncle. Lenora paused by Wolfe's desk. "You've cost me credibility," she said quietly. "No," Wolfe replied. "You expended it." She considered that, then inclined her head and left. When the door closed behind the last of them, the brownstone reclaimed its silence. I leaned back against my desk. "No handcuffs," I said. "Unnecessary," Wolfe replied. "You're satisfied?" "I am," he said. "The threatened murder has been averted." "Of integrity?" "Yes." I glanced at the empty chairs. "You don't often solve a case where everyone stays alive and mostly employed." Wolfe's eyes closed briefly. "Justice need not always bleed." I moved to the window, watching the ordinary traffic below. "You think she'll do it again?" "No," Wolfe said. "She has learned the cost of spectacle." "And Klein?" "He has learned the cost of arrogance." I turned back. "And us?" Wolfe opened his eyes fully. "We," he said, have been reminded that whispers are rarely about volume. They are about proximity. Fritz entered then, announcing lunch with restrained dignity. As we moved toward the dining room, I glanced once more at the quiet office. The globe stood undisturbed. The blotter was smooth. No notes lay on pillows. The brownstone, at least, had not been breached. Lunch was braised duck with a reduction that would have made lesser men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. Wolfe applied himself to it with the composure of a bishop administering last rites. I watched him over the rim of my coffee cup and waited. He dislikes post-mortems conducted before digestion. Finally, as Fritz removed the plates and retreated, Wolfe dabbed his lips and leaned back. "You are dissatisfied," he said. "I wouldn't say that. You would imply it." "All right," I said. It ended cleanly. "You object to cleanliness?" "I object to simplicity," I replied. Lenora admits it. Klein relents. Everyone agrees to transparency, and we return to duck. Wolfe regarded me steadily. "You believe there is residue?" "I believe," I said, "that people who engineer whispers don't stop thinking strategically just because they've been exposed." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. An astute observation. Before I could enjoy that, the doorbell rang. I went to answer it with a sense of inevitability that experience had trained into me. Reuben Klein stood on the stoop, alone, coat collar turned up though the day was mild. "I need 5 minutes," he said. "You'll get 10, I told him. He entered without ceremony and followed me into the office. Wolfe did not rise. "I thought we had concluded matters," Wolfe said. "So did I," Klein replied. He remained standing. "There's been a development," he said. "Which is?" Wolfe asked. Klein drew an envelope from his coat pocket and placed it on the desk. "It arrived an hour ago," he said, "placed by messenger." I felt something tighten in the room. Wolfe did not touch the envelope immediately. "Describe it." "Plain. No return address." "Open it, Mr. Goodwin." I did. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed in the same stark capitals as the note that had rested on Klein's pillow. "Integrity acknowledged." Now for the body. I looked up slowly. Klein's face had gone the color of unbuttered toast. Wolfe extended his hand. I passed him the sheet. He examined it without visible reaction. "The typeface?" he asked. "Matches the first," I said. "At a glance." "Paper stock?" "Common." Klein's voice was strained. "This isn't Lenora." "No," Wolfe said calmly. "It is not." Klein stared at him. "You're certain?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because Ms. Voss achieved her objective. She has no incentive to escalate to physical harm. And this," he tapped the page lightly, "is a different appetite." The room felt smaller. "You said the threatened murder had been averted," I reminded him. "I said the murder of integrity had been averted," Wolfe corrected. "I did not guarantee the absence of other ambitions." Klein sank into a chair without being invited. "Who?" he whispered. Wolfe folded his hands. "Let us review. 5 individuals possessed the Phase 2 report. One of them engineered a moral coercion. That has been resolved. Now someone invokes the body. You think it's retaliation?" I asked. "Possibly. Or opportunism." Klein swallowed. "Against me?" "Most likely," Wolfe said. I leaned forward. "The envelope. Messenger, you said?" "Yes." "From where?" "My office. The receptionist signed for it." "Name?" "She doesn't recall." "And the body?" "The writer assumes awareness of the body." "The writer assumes awareness of yesterday's resolution. That limits the field." "To the 5 again," I said. "Or to someone informed by them." Klein's eyes widened. "You think one of them told—" "I think," Wolfe said, "that yesterday's gathering was not as private as we assumed." The telephone rang. We all looked at it. I lifted the receiver. "Goodwin," A pause. Then the same male voice as before, unhurried. "You see," it said. "Yes," I replied. The whisper was only the beginning. "Who are you?" I demanded. "You were warned," the voice continued. The announcement was made. Now it proceeds. "Proceeds how?" A soft exhale. "Tonight," he said, and the line went dead. I replaced the receiver carefully. Wolfe did not move. "Tonight?" Klein said faintly. "Yes," I answered. "At the townhouse," Wolfe said. Klein jerked upright. "Why there?" "Because," Wolfe said, "the first whisper occurred there. The narrative will seek symmetry." Klein stood abruptly. "I'll call the police." "You will not," Wolfe said. Klein froze. "You will return home," Wolfe continued, "and alter nothing. You will dismiss no servants. You will increase no visible security." "That's insane." "It is strategic," Wolfe replied. "Mr. Goodwin and Mr. Panzer will be present." I felt the familiar shift, the moment when speculation hardens into preparation. "You believe this is real?" I said. "Yes, not metaphor. No." Klein's hands trembled. "Someone intends to kill me." "Perhaps," Wolfe said evenly. "No, or perhaps someone intends to kill the Enterprise in a different fashion. We must allow the intention to reveal itself." "And if it reveals itself with a knife?" Klein demanded. "Then," Wolfe said, "we will be there." The brownstone was no longer entirely at peace. I went to fetch Saul. As I reached the door, Wolfe spoke again. "Mr. Goodwin." I turned. "Tonight," he said, "listen for the whisper. It will not come from where you expect." I nodded once. Outside, the city moved toward evening. Inside, the game had shifted from rhetoric to flesh. By 8 that evening, the Klein townhouse had the look of cultivated calm. Lights glowed warmly behind tall windows. The curtains were half drawn. A passerby would have seen nothing unusual, wealth at rest. Inside, nothing was at rest. Saul Panzer had taken up position in the small sitting room adjacent to the library, where the original whisper had been delivered. Fred Durkin waited in the kitchen corridor with instructions to intercept anyone who attempted to leave in a hurry. I stationed myself near the base of the staircase leading to the second floor. Wolfe, immovable as ever, occupied a broad armchair in the library, precisely where Klein had stood 2 nights before. Klein himself hovered near the mantel, pale but resolute. "You're certain it will be tonight?" he asked for the 4th time. "Yes," Wolfe said. "Why?" "Because escalation thrives on momentum," Wolfe replied. "Delay dissipates fear." The servants had been told only that additional security was present due to press interest. None had been dismissed. None appeared unusually nervous. At 8:30, the doorbell rang. Klein started despite himself. I moved to answer it. Dahlia stood on the stoop. "I wasn't invited," she said, "but I'm not staying away." "You were expected," I told her. She entered, gaze sweeping the foyer. In the library, she nodded to Wolfe. "You think someone is coming?" "Yes." "To kill him?" "To conclude the narrative," Wolfe said. At 8:40, another ring. This time it was Vera Kether. "I received a message," she said quietly when I opened the door. "From an unlisted number. Be present when the body falls." I let her in. Klein stared at her. "You too?" She nodded. Wolfe's eyes narrowed slightly. At 8:45, Lenora Voss arrived, face set. "I assume this is not coincidence," she said. "No," Wolfe replied. "And you believe the sender is among us?" "Yes." Her gaze sharpened. "You are certain it was not me?" "I am," Wolfe said. At 8:50, Martin Sloane entered without waiting for a full invitation. "I'm not fond of melodrama," he said, "but I'm less fond of being excluded." "And Dr. Trent?" I asked. "He claimed illness," Sloane replied. "Said he wouldn't attend." Wolfe's eyes flicked toward me. At 8:55, the lights flickered. Not dim this time. Flickered. Klein inhaled sharply. I moved toward the hallway switch. "Leave it," Wolfe said. The front door opened. No bell, just the soft click of a latch. Every head turned. Dr. Elias Trent stood in the doorway of the library. He was pale, but not from nerves, from decision. "You shouldn't be here," Sloane said. "I should," Trent replied. In his right hand was not a knife, not a gun, but a slim vial, clear glass, filled with colorless liquid. Klein's voice cracked. "What is that?" "Armitage," Trent said. The room stilled. "You're mad," Lenora whispered. "No," Trent said quietly. "I'm finished being ignored." Wolfe did not rise. "Explain," he said. Trent stepped fully into the room. "Phase 2. Anomalies were not minor," he said. 3 subjects experienced transient disorientation. A 4th developed persistent tremors. I recommended suspension. Rubin insisted on adjustment and continuation. "That's not accurate," Klein protested. "It is," Trent said. "I compromised. I allowed optimism to override caution." "And the whisper?" Wolfe prompted. Trent's mouth tightened. "I overheard Lenora confronting him weeks ago. 'You're murdering integrity,' she said. It stayed with me." Lenora's eyes widened slightly. "I wanted him to feel what I felt," Trent continued. The weight of consequence. So I whispered. I placed the note. I recorded the announcement, but it wasn't enough." "You forced transparency," Vera said. "What more do you want?" Trent lifted the vial slightly. "Proof," he said. "If Armitage is safe, it will do nothing. If it is not—" Klein went white. "You'd risk your own life?" "Yes." "You're a scientist," Wolfe said calmly, "not a martyr." Trent's gaze flicked to him. "Sometimes they are the same." "No," Wolfe said. "They are not. A scientist tests hypotheses under controlled conditions. You propose a spectacle." Silence pressed in. "You intend to ingest that here," Wolfe continued, "before witnesses. You believe that if harm occurs, it will destroy the rollout permanently." "Yes. And if no harm occurs? Then the compound is vindicated." Wolfe's voice remained steady. "You miscalculate." "How?" Trent demanded. "By assuming your dosage knowledge is perfect. By assuming delayed reactions will manifest immediately. By assuming this is science." Trent's hand trembled slightly. "This," Wolfe said, "is theater." The word landed. "You resent Mr. Klein's acceleration," Wolfe went on. "You resent Ms. Voss's coercion. You resent your own compromise. So you escalate again, from whisper to metaphor to flesh." Trent swallowed. "You do not seek truth," Wolfe said. "You seek absolution." The vial wavered. "Put it down," Vera said softly. "You think this redeems you?" Wolfe pressed. "It condemns the very process you claim to defend." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Trent's shoulders sagged. The vial slipped from his fingers. Not shattered, but caught by Saul, who had appeared silently at his side. And Trent sank into a chair. "I couldn't let it proceed," he murmured. "It will not proceed recklessly," Klein said hoarsely. "It will proceed properly." Wolfe inclined his head slightly. "The body," he said, "was your own." Trent closed his eyes. "Police were summoned quietly this time, not for murder, but for prevention." As the house settled and statements were given, Wolfe remained in his chair, silent. Later, back at the brownstone, dinner was served without commentary. When coffee arrived, I looked at him. "Well," I said, "no blood?" "No," Wolfe replied. "Only ego. And ambition. And fear." I nodded. "You said the whisper wouldn't come from where I expected." "You expected a weapon," he said. "It was a confession." He lifted his cup. "Integrity," he said. is rarely murdered by others. It is more often surrendered. I leaned back and listening to the quiet hum of West 35th. In the end, the loudest sound had not been the announcement. It had been the whisper of a man arguing with himself, and finally losing.